Okay, some of you have been having trouble with your MyPlace boards. So we're going to do a little troubleshooting and kind of walk you through the circuit. The back of your book contains the circuit right here that we'll be looking at. And so we're going to begin tracing that out without the battery installed to make sure everything's working. Okay. So first thing we want to do is make sure that our voltage regulator, the 7805, is getting there. So turn my meter to diode check. That's where it beeps. We have it on. So it's beeping. So when it sees continuity, it makes the beeping sound. So we're going to start back at the source. I'm going to identify the positive side of my battery, which is going to be here. So I'm going to start over here, and you need to do this with the switch in the battery position. So I'm going to begin walking myself through this circuit. Where does the wire come into the board? Let's get a little closer. All right. So where does the wire come into the board? Remember that I have one lead on the positive terminal of my battery connector. Battery is not hooked up. So I'll see it's going to the board. That's where the red wire is coming in. So now I'll check the negative lead. So I'll move my lead over to the negative on the battery snap. And then I'll check over here. Notice that I can follow these traces out. I could use a schematic, but see this small trace right here? I can follow that out to where the negative lead is soldered. So I know that my battery is functioning correctly. Next, I'm going to make sure I don't have a short on the board. So I'm going to touch both leads of the terminal to the battery snap. No continuity, that's good. No short. So I'm going to move back over to the positive. And I'm going to start working my way through the circuit. So it's going there. Here, we're going to follow it over. Here's where our battery terminal comes in. Remember, I still have one lead. To the switch. Looks like we have continuity to the switch. Let's see if it's going through the switch. It is. We're going to follow this trace all the way over here to our voltage regulator. This is where our voltage regulator is coming in. So it is getting to our voltage regulator. Now, without power on the circuit, we don't know if that's working, but I'll tell you that this middle pin on this voltage regulator, the one in the center, should be connected to ground. This middle pin on the voltage regulator should be connected to ground. So I'm going to move my lead over to the negative, and I'm going to check that middle lead to make sure I have a good solid bond to ground. And I can go back over here, and here's the negative lead on the battery. Looks like everything's working. You're going to ask, well, where's that connection on my print? Let's look on my print. Here's my 7805. Voltage comes in. Here's the middle pin, and that should be connected to ground. Comes out will be 5 volts, but we can't test that because we don't have any electricity. So I'm going to turn my meter over to DC voltage, 20 volts, and I'm going to begin checking. So first thing I want to do is power up this circuit. I want to make sure my voltage regulator is working. Make sure my battery is on. I will just put one lead onto the negative pin. Oh, put the black on the negative. I'm going to check for 9 volts coming in from the battery. Do I see 9 volts? Yes, I have 9 volts at that point. There we go. Light shut off on me. We have 9 volts. So I'm going to follow it through. I already checked continuity, so I can just come over here to my voltage regulator and see that I have 9 volts. Now, if it's working correctly, the other side of that voltage regulator should be showing 5 volts. So you'll have to trust me. I want to kind of get a zoom in on this, but if we check here, we're reading 5 volts. All right. On that side of the pin. So where does it go from there? Well, if you look very closely, there's a tiny little pin right here. Okay, I'm going to say there's a trace inside this board that we can't see. But there's a small, see that small little dot right there? There. I'm going to say that that is probably where it's going inside the board. So we should have 5 volts. Now, I'll go back to my diagram showing here that I'm going to trace this diagram out, come up just a little bit. I'm showing that I should have 5 volts coming down here. I should have 5 volts coming out of my voltage regulator, and I should go to R2 and R3. So R2, the backside of R2 and R3 should have 5 volts. So I'm going to check that. I'm going to get on my ground. I'm going to locate R2 and R3, which is going to be down here at the bottom. So if I look on this little trace here, I'll see that with 1 lead on ground, it disappears inside that inside trace, inside this board, and pops up. Where's it pop up at? Sure. Well, first of all, it should also have 5 volts on the one side of the LED connection. So let's check here. I have 5 volts here. All right, so that's where one of the red wires. All right, and so I'll check the other red wire coming off the board. That's where we would hook our LEDs for this test. I have 5 volts there. Now we're coming down to these resistors. See how they're connected together? That would be R2 and R3 on our diagram. That has 5 volts. That has 5 volts. We'll see what's coming out. And we got about 0.6 volts here coming out the other side of the resistor, which is correct for this circuit because we're actually switching the negative. We're actually switching the negative on the LED. So at this point, so far, I see the circuit's working. This is a working circuit. I'm going to pull my battery off. Now I'm going to check what's after R2 and R3. It looks like we have some capacitors, our little battery banks right here. These are our buckets. I'm going to check those. Easiest way to check them in a board, you have a check on your meter, but that's not going to work. I'm going to turn it into ohms. So I'm going to move my meter into ohms. Let's watch this. All right. And when I check these capacitor leads, they're right here. I'm simply going to put my meter. Probably, I don't know if we want to do that or not. Let's see what we got. I'm going to check across this capacitor. First of all, I can short it out. That should discharge any charge in it. Let's see what we're reading here. Turn it down a little bit. It's kind of a touch and feel situation here. Let's see if we can get it. Somebody got to apply a little pressure. All right. So now you'll see, did you see the meter turn? What that was is because I'm checking resistance, my meter is actually putting off a small amount of voltage, and I just charged that capacitor. And I saw current flow into the capacitor until it was fully charged, and then it shows open. So if I were to swap my leads and go from positive to negative, it really doesn't matter as long as you swap them. I should charge it the other direction, and I should see a brief change in my meter showing that it is charging. Let's see if we can get on there. So you got to get on there pretty good. I'm going to swap hands. And so I'm going to check the other side of this capacitor. There, see? Oh, for just a second, it charged up, and then it showed open because it's fully charged, and it's no longer conducting electricity. If I was to discharge this capacitor by shorting it out, touch the two pieces together. Remember, your battery should be disconnected. Now touch this again. Hopefully. We'll try swapping leads. It should have discharged, but I don't know what's in the circuit. And we'll see the meter charged up pretty quickly. Next, we have the only thing left in the circuit. I would check both capacitors. The only thing left are little transistors. So let's go look at those. And from the center base, depending whether it's NPN or PNP, we should show a small amount of continuity between those. So here we're showing continuity here. Here we're showing continuity here. Nope. I'm going to swap my leads. Showing continuity there. If I can get those together without a good connection on them. Might have to swap your leads on this part, but we should show about 0.6 on each one of these. Yeah, I may not have my meter set too high. Let's turn my meter down. See what I got now. Testing in a circuit sometimes is other parts of the circuit mess with the meter readings, so that's not always the best. Check the other transistor over here on the other side. And believe it or not, I've already done this once and it worked, so. I'll swap the leads here. Really the best way is to have it removed from the circuit, but I'm not sure that's always going to work for you. There, kind of have to dig into the solder a little bit. We saw some continuity there. What you're looking for basically is the same reading on both sets of transistors, touching the same pins. So we'll look here, see if we can dig into that. You should show some continuity. I'm quite not sure why this board's not working, but easy way is I can pull one out of the circuit and just show it to you. I'm going to grab a transistor. Pull these leads apart. See if we get a good reading here between the middle and each side. We'll see, we have a little bit of something. Turn that down a little bit. What do we got? I've also got some videos on my page. I'm not seeing any continuity, but class is about to start. Should show continuity between the middle. Depending, you might have to swap your leads between the middle and outside. I'm not quite sure why that's not working, but it's time to start class.